Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I'm here with our family of seekers. And usually we read through the Gita every time we meet together, and we talk about its relevance to our lives. And today we're doing something extra special. Today, we are interviewing two members of our community that have been practicing spiritual life for decades, probably longer than I've been alive, actually. You guys have been practicing spiritual life, I imagine. And we're learning how the Gita has remained alive in their lives as they've been practicing spirituality through the ups and downs of everything, careers, marriage, kids, family, you name it. So today is Gita in Action community style, and we're really excited to learn from you both. So thank you for being here. We have Kalachandji Das here, and his beautiful wife Shradanjali. Welcome. So before we start getting into questions, Shradanjali usually says our prayers for us, and maybe best that we keep that format going here. So, Shradanjali, would you like to say our prayers for us before we start?
Om Jnana Timirandasya Jana Jana Salakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm just letting a couple more people into the room. Okay, great. All right. So let's get started here. Let's maybe start just at the beginning, and just learning a little bit about how you guys came into spirituality, how spirituality maybe looked in your lives growing up, and how you found your way to this path.
Should I start?
Sure.
I guess I'll start. I grew up in a communist household. Our parents were communists from the
1830s.
30s, from way back. And our father he was being watched by the government when he came into the United States. He's from Austria, and he came in through England. So there was
He
no,
escaped the Nazis.
yeah. Yeah, so this was in the 1930s. So there was no religion at all in our household. I know once I got a little bit older, I used to love to go to midnight mass for the whole spectacle of it. It was, and my mom's best friend was a Baptist and listened to gospel music all the time and did up Christmas, and I would hang out in her house, but that was it religion wise. And my brother was 9.5 years older than me. So it's quite a distance of age. And we were both very independent in New York City growing up. In fact, I'd say our parents had little idea of what life was like sort of on the streets for kids in New York. I think that was quite common for children of immigrants back then. I guess we were what's now been called red diaper babies. And I mean, that's a whole story behind that and the politics and the secrecy and some things that went on with that. Our father actually in the 1950s had to go underground for a short time. He was coming home from work and reading the newspaper and saw his name on a list of suspects and never made it home that night, just sort of went under until the heat died down. But anyway, so
That was the McCarthy
in
era.
the during the McCarthy era in the 1950s. So my brother left home fairly young. He lived on the Lower East Side, and then he headed out. He went to Mexico for some time and studied pottery. And then he went west, like, so many young people of that age, and ended up in Morning Star Ranch, which is a commune, a hippie commune, north of, I think, 60 miles north of San Francisco. And he used to write me postcards to stay in touch with me. And he would write, and my name was Carly to the family when I was young. And he would write, Dear Carly, and he wrote from Mexico, I remember once, and postcards from Morning Star, he wrote, I'm living in a tree. That's all he said. And I was, like a little hippie. And I just thought that was the peak of life. You could not do better than that. I was like, my brother lives in a tree. Like, I was so thrilled about that. And at Morningstar Ranch was himself, and I mean, the whole story, and Vishnu John, and Madhuvisa Prabhu, and one other devotee, I don't know his name, and that's where they first met Srila Prabhupada. My brother was, anyway, they met Srila Prabhupada, and they were all living naked in trees. There's a whole story how Vishnu John and Tamal Krishna met, and one was in one tree playing his instrument, and the other was in his tree playing his instrument, and they started playing together, tree to tree. So here's Srila Prabhupada came, and they all gathered in a circle. And here were these, like, you know, they were living in the forest. And they were living naked. And so here are these, I mean, what to say, circle of dirty hippies around
Love,
right,
1967.
around Srila Prabhupada. And these are, this is the best America had to offer. And, we think about Srila Prabhupada in the Lower East Side, but I think that must have been a real eye-opener. So from there, I understand we've been told he would go visit the temple in San Francisco. He played flute. He was a really excellent flute player. And Mukunda Maharaj told us how they would hear him before the temple was just by the corner, and they would hear him play the flute. And they would say, oh, here comes Tom, the flute player. And so that's where he really joined with the devotees. And I got a postcard from there saying, Dear Carly, and I don't remember the exact wording of it, but basically that he was chanting Hare Krishna and signed it Tamal Krishna. And I was like, what is this? I had no idea what was going on, but without going into my whole childhood, I'll just say I worshiped my brother as a young child, and he really took possession of me. That he was 9.5 years old when I was born. He declared that I was his. He gave me all his stuffed animals. He even was like taking care of me, changing diapers, rolling me around in the streets in the carriage. He was a very loving brother, and I adored him. All of the pictures of us have me like smiling, happy, and just looking up in pure ecstasy at him. And whatever he did, that's what I wanted to do. I mean, that was it. So he wrote that, and I was like, what is this about? And I went to I was maybe 12, I think, at that point. This would have been 12 years old. And I did a little like work in an office, helping out. So I had some money. And I went to Brentano's bookstore on 8th Street in the Village. And I bought a copy of the Macmillan, that lavender copy Bhagavad Gita. And that summer, I was sort of like interning at a summer camp in Pennsylvania. And I went and remember I climbed into an apple tree and read the Bhagavad Gita that summer. And for me, I didn't make the connection until decades later that like he was living in the tree, I climbed into a tree, and all of, of course, like the Western symbolism of the apple tree. And there I was reading the Bhagavad Gita. And I just read it. I just like took it in. We had no religion. I didn't have any trouble. It wasn't a matter of belief for me or anything like that. I was just like, oh, this is what it is. Like this is truth. This is reality. Here's Krishna, here's Arjuna. They're talking to each other, and Krishna is telling him what's up. And I just bought right into it. And I never thought twice about it. And I'd say from then on, that was really the only like spiritual, belief system that I had and I'd ever known. And I took it as mine immediately. I got a cat that summer. I named him Arjuna. He was like a real hunter. And I went home, and some months later, I don't know exactly how long, I somehow got the address of the Henry Street Temple in Brooklyn. And we were uptown, all the way uptown Manhattan. So that was a good hour, hour and a half subway ride. And I took it alone. I was on the subways by that age already. And I remember walking up the steps. It was a brownstone. So it was like 6 steps up and then a little platform. And when you got to that platform, a woman, a devotee, would put tilak on you. And I can still remember really the feel of her finger on my forehead. And in 1999, I'll jump ahead, we were in Vrindavan for the first time, and we met Devi Shakti Prabhu. And she said, she heard the story and she said, oh, yeah, that was my service. And so, so many years later, I met her again. And I remember being in there, not so much. I remember dancing and the kirtan, and the prasad was very sweet. And we sit on the floor in the hallway with our backs. And a young devotee, a young brahmachari, started talking to me about the philosophy. And I was a real punk,
New Yorker.
a real New York, full of myself. I thought, I knew the world, I knew everything. I'd read the Bhagavad Gita. I remember thinking to myself, this guy doesn't even know what he's talking about. And here he's telling me, I was like so full of it. He doesn't even, I've read the Bhagavad Gita, I know what's happening. And anyway, and I thought the girls were really pretty. I really loved my experience there. I think I went back maybe once more, maybe twice. Nobody ever asked me who I was or tried to bring me in. I was, quite young.
You're only 13. I
Yeah,
mean,
12, 13 years old at that point. And that was it. I just sort of floated away into, the 1960s and then the 70s and led the life that everybody was leading in those times, not really thinking a lot about Krishna or Krishna consciousness or anything.
Were you still connected to your brother
I
during these
know.
years?
And from the time after that postcard, I didn't hear from him again for 10 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And and thanks for asking, you interrupt anytime. Uh, I, I always just felt he's out there. I never
Yeah.
felt, especially like separated with, like I said, we were very independent. I knew he was out there. I knew I loved him. I knew he loved me. I just didn't really think twice about it. That's what you did at that time, at that age. You went out into the world. Somehow, and over the years, I would see maybe a Back to Godhead. There was that article with the famous picture of him and Vishnu John and then the other devotees in front of the bus. And I would see that. Somehow I knew he lived in Bombay. I wrote a poem, I remember, for him. And it was like, how many rains in your home in Bombay since those days, and about the wind blowing east over the Hudson River. Because he was also a father figure for me. He taught me how to play sports, whatever I did, he taught me, like, maybe a father or a mother might do. And how to walk the streets, just how to be together. We he would take me for walks. We'd go to the park. There's anyway some great photos of it. So we were separated entirely for 10 years. I didn't hear from him. And our father died in 1977, same year as Srila Prabhupada. So he lost two fathers in that one year, and I think that was a very significant aspect of his life. And somehow, I have no idea how, he found out where I was. I was living in New York City at the time in the Upper West Side. And he got my information and got in touch with me and invited me down to visit with him at the 55th Street Temple in Manhattan. And we spent the day together. And we talked about many things. He told me, how I should adjust my life, what I should do. He also said at that time, he said, our father wasted his life. And our father was a leader in the community, a leader in the newspaper, and he was a printer in his shop. And so I didn't relate to that at all. And that was sort of something between us. But it was very, affectionate. I remember when I left, he gave me a garland I wore around my neck on the bus in the city on the way home. And it was
You were
like
like in
I'd been
your
in another
20s at this
universe.
time?
I'm sorry?
How old were you at this time? Like in your 20s?
19,
22.
2022.
Okay.
I just graduated from college.
Okay.
So 20, yeah, 22 at that point. And then I didn't hear from him for another 10 years practically. And Shradanjali and I mean, we would need a whole nother hour for the story of how we met and our courtship. And it's very romantic and beautiful and ended up really nicely. But when we moved out to California, I'll let her talk.
Yeah, so yeah, that was and just to say like it was another
1985.
85 we were getting married and I all I knew was that his brother was a monk in the Eastern tradition, like and we sent him an invite to our wedding. And so
We just sent it to like a temple, thinking, oh, it'll get to him somewhere.
yeah, so
Yeah.
we had no idea what. And he sent us a beautiful letter back and also his book Servant of the Servant um, as a wedding gift, which I read and didn't even understand. Like I didn't even it was
We had all the books and the
we had all the books, we had everything. Yeah, anyway, so
she had moved at least three times. She'd picked up Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, back to Godheads, but somehow
but Krishna sometimes puts a veil until you
So
read
just
them.
by happenstance, you had picked up all of these books?
I had these books over time. I had
Oh,
gotten
you
them.
had them. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was in his, we lived together before we got married and stuff.
Sure.
Um, but maybe I should go back and
Sure.
say how I came in.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions so
Yeah.
far?
Well, I'm curious about your background too, because I know
Okay.
Yeah.
you had quite a different background. You came in kind of practicing a tradition, right?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I grew up on Long Island and my family, my father uh was an, I also had immigrant kind of parents. Both were born in America, but were just, kind of born in America. And my father's family had a little grocery store in Astoria and an Italian grocery. And my mother was from Finland, and her mother was a maid in one of the big houses, like The Great Gatsby. Is that if anyone's ever read that? My grandmother was a maid in one of those houses, and she married the chauffeur, and they lived above the garage, and But then my grandfather lit out for the West, and my mother was put in an orphanage, and her mother would visit her only twice a year when the lady of the house would let her go. So it was kind of strange.
Oh.
But my father grew up with uh, a horse. They did deliveries with horses, and when he was a young man, he looked for opportunities because he loved horses and found a riding stable that's actually was exactly where LaGuardia Airport is now. there was a horse stable, and he became a polo player and broke into the sport as an Italian, first Italian to play in America.
Or
He was poor, but he was really good at polo. So, and so we grew up out on the island. He had a stable and a polo club. And so I grew up with horses and playing polo and knowing all these wealthy people, even though we were pretty poor. So he dealt with he dealt horses and all that kind of stuff. My mother was raised
he's
Lutheran.
now in the Polo Hall of Fame.
He's in the polo.
Really? Wow.
Not for being so good at the sport itself, but for welcoming so many people into the sport, Black and Asian and poor people, like he facilitated anybody to play. If you could have, he would even lend you a horse kind of thing.
Wow.
So,
I'm
so I was
understanding you
raised
better and
Lutheran.
better, Stella.
Yeah. So I was raised Lutheran because my mother was Lutheran and was raised Lutheran. And we went to a very active, very progressive ELCA Lutheran church. Lutheran is like Reformed Catholic. It's the same liturgy, but it's not sacraments are sometimes the same and all that kind of stuff. But I loved church. To me, I knew there was something beyond the material. I don't know else to explain it. I wasn't like, a gung-ho, church kid, but inside myself, I loved looking up to something more than this. And even as a child, I was 7 years old and I looked around at the adults in the pews and felt like we were all children. It was so strange. I don't know. Um, So
Okay.
I practiced that and went to church, all through my until I went to college. And I stopped doing any kind of devotional life, although I always kept my Bible with me and I loved reading it. Um, so then we met in college, uh, at Stony Brook University. And I was engaged to be married when we met. This is the whole story. So anyway, we got married and then we moved to Santa Barbara, California.
What well, I have to say that our my brother said that this was our seventh time around together, our seventh
Really?
lifetime together. And indeed, when
Wow.
the first time we didn't know a soul in common, I saw her from maybe like 50, 30, 40 yards away. And as soon as I saw her, I mean, not only was I attracted, but I recognized her immediately. And nobody ever thought I would ever get married in my life. That was not the life I was leading. I had so many friends. And I saw her and I said, I knew that was my wife. And I mean, it's a whole story after that.
It was the 1980s and we wore little felt hats.
But we
Yeah,
go seventh time, but each time we
we'd
flipped
switch
we
genders.
switch over. So I
Oh
was
my
the wife
goodness.
last time, she was the husband, and each time because he said he wasn't happy about it. He said that because at the end of life we're too attached. We keep thinking of each other instead of thinking about Krishna. So we have to come back and be together again.
Oh my goodness.
So in Santa Barbara, yeah, we moved there.
Yeah. So we moved to Santa Barbara after like he was in the PhD program and I had graduated and then I went to library school and then we were still in New York, and then we got married on Long Island and then we moved to Santa Barbara. That's where he got a job. And I got a job at the public library and it was great. I mean, Santa Barbara for 20 somethings is this like a paradise. And then we had our first child, Liana, and it was when she was about 18 months old. I felt like I needed to practice something. I was, just reading the Bible on my own wasn't enough anymore. I felt a yearning. And so I went church shopping. I don't know if anyone has ever done this. Every Sunday I went to a different church. In California, a lot of people, it's like the churches are either too weird and culty, or the Christian, or people didn't go. Like I went to the progressive Lutheran church and it was like, five elderly people and no families, and I was just like, no. So we were I was really talking to my husband about it and he was cool with it. And again, in our library, we had many books, was the Gita, was the Shema, like three first two volumes of the Shrimad Bhagavatam and magazines. Still nothing. I grew up cutting school and going into the city and never saw a devotee ever. And I loved Godspell. If I'd heard that flute or horn, I would have jumped. But Krishna wasn't ready for me to do anything. So
So we were in a health food store
yeah,
one
the
day, and I
store.
saw just a little piece of paper with Radharani's picture on it, and it said Love Feast, and it had the time, the date, and the address. And I recognized it immediately. I said, "Oh, you're gonna really like this."
Yeah, so we went to this house in a neighborhood not far from our house, and we had a little 18-month-old Liana, and we knock on the door, and there's all these people in there, standing up like grown-ups, like packed into this small house. And our daughter darted into the legs of the people and disappeared. And I was just like, what? It's like, can you imagine Prema just disappearing into a crowd of people? So
Of total strangers.
total strangers. And I'm elbowing my way through, we're trying to find where she was. And she had gone directly into the side of the living room where there was an altar with a Gornitai. And she was standing there jumping up and down, trying to reach them. That was our daughter. And
Oh,
Hridayananda Goswami was there, and we met a bunch of devotees, and Krishna allowed her to sleep on my chest while the sermon was going on, the lecture, which
wow.
was the one and only time she did that. But
I
Krishna was
hear
like,
you.
okay, the first time you're here, I'll let you listen as a young mother.
I could
Well, one of
totally
the
relate.
challenges as parents during that time, and for sure she did it more than I did, but us having to take her outside, when it
Yeah.
wasn't, she wouldn't cry so much, but she
She
would
keeps
sing.
singing because we do the kirtans.
Yeah.
And she'd sing really loudly, like just in her baby, way, like ah, like. And then as soon as the kirtan was over, she kept
She
singing.
would stop. Yeah.
So I loved it. I was like, and then he told me like the whole backstory, which we didn't even really talk about. And I was like, how did you keep this from me for at this point, 4 years? And immediately after that program, went home and scoured our library and got all the books, put them on the coffee table, and was like, and I picked up the Gita. That was my first time I picked up the Gita after that program. Um, and read the whole thing almost in one sitting and was like, this is the truth. It opened the Bible to me. I was so many, like I was so conversant with the Bible that the I kept thinking like, oh, this is what Jesus meant. Oh, this is what was happening. And it was just amazing. Like it blew my mind. And then we went to LA and I got my first sari and this I just love the colors. I mean, how could you not like dancing, eating, singing religion? I mean, it was a
And
no-brainer for me. I was like all in.
we did not tell anyone as much as possible who our relation or anything
And we
like that.
didn't know who Tamal was in the
Right.
movement either.
Right.
We had no idea. We just thought he was, at this point, and now I knew he was a devotee. His name was Tamal Krishna.
But we didn't want to do it for him. And so but eventually somehow, devotees are kind of pushy and nosy and ask a lot of questions. And so, it came out and we got a letter from him. I got a letter from him saying that he had heard from some devotees that we were attending programs. What did we think about the philosophy? Like that. And the next thing, I guess, is when we went to New York.
Yeah, so that June, the same June so we went to our first program in January of 1989. And that June of 89, we were visiting my family in New York and our friends. And so at this point I was like, so is there a temple here? It was in Brooklyn. And we went and we were just in
Just to
like,
have darshan at the
we were just in
temple.
shorts and t-shirts, we were just like hanging out in Brooklyn, like, and so we go up to the door of the temple, and this, very handsome young man opens the door for us. And you
I just said, have you ever heard of someone named Tamal Krishna? We knew it was Goswami at that point. Do you know anything about him? Do you know where he is? And he said, well, may I ask, who is asking? And so we told him, and his jaw just dropped. And he says, well, yeah, he's upstairs right now. And he said, don't move, don't go anywhere. And he runs upstairs and he comes down. He says, come back in 1 hour. And
And so that was good because I realized we weren't really dressed for the temple. Like I had
shower
no
dress.
a leg. So we went back to where we were staying in Brooklyn and like got as dressed up as we possibly could. I washed the baby, got hers,
Took her a
and
couple showers, yeah. And went back.
and went back.
He, he brought us upstairs.
And this young man who was was Kastuba. And it was his Kastuba of Wisdom of the
Yeah.
Sages.
It was his initiation
It
day.
was his initiation day.
Him and Ladini Shakti
And
and Gandiva
Gandiva.
from Hong Kong, I think she lives, and one other devotee,
Yeah. So
which we stayed for that.
that was our first
That was
meeting with
later in the day.
Kastuba, who
Yeah.
we became very good friends with. So
And they brought us upstairs. We walk into the room, and there is Tamal Krishna Goswami, danda in hand, like one of these official photos, with flanked by these two tall brahmacharis. They're like two pillars and him in the middle.
And they're all sternly looking. And
this is the first time you've seen Tamal Krishna for 10
Since
years.
1978, and her first time meeting him.
Yeah.
So it's been like 12 or so years. Because this was
you'd seen him in
89.
person.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd been we had gotten letters and stuff. And so here's this very intimidating wall of orange. And, and for me, family is a big, big thing. Like family is, huge. And I was just like thrilled to meet his brother, because brothers, family. And I'm like, here. So we walk into the room and they're all standing there. Not a word was said. And I scoop up the baby and lift her like the Lion King and say, here's your niece, I had no idea like what a Swami was or
And
anything.
I went up and gave him a big hug. And I always say it was like
a family tsunami
right.
came in.
We're very, yeah. And it was like hugging a board. I mean, he was so stiff. He didn't know what to do with us at that time.
To have these orange brahmacharis next to him, because I don't think he knew what we would do,
Yeah. And he sent them out and we talked, and it was really nice. And then,
we went down
to the initiation.
Went to the initiation, except that I had to, of course, leave because here it is with the fire sacrifice, and Liana wouldn't stop singing. So
Right. She's still
and he looked, and here's her new uncle, her uncle, who's looking, because we're sitting pretty close. And he like looks at her and she just smiles, and she like reached out her hands for him, and he's like performing a ceremony,
He was pretty sober at that time. And
it was hilarious.
And I guess next, then we exchanged letters. And the next time was whatever year was that, I get a phone call when we moved to Iowa. So it was 1991, 92, like that.
And you guys that from this time now were like actively practicing reading, going to programs.
Reading, chanting. We had gotten beads, yeah, we were doing it. Um,
Sarvatma Prabhu, who lives in now in Gitanagari, and also Revati Prabhu, who she also lives there, where they came over, they, helped us like,
they taught us about food and
you know,
how to do, boga and
they really took us under their wings.
all the things we didn't know. So, a lot of times, like devotees now take a Bhakti Sastra course, or they trained up in a temple.
We
Yeah.
still have no
We have
training
no
whatsoever.
whatsoever. We don't know a lot of the prayers by heart at all. Like, it's
We're like newbies. All the After all this time, we still feel
we
very
still feel
new
pretty new.
when
We
we enter
still
a
don't
temple.
know a lot of stuff, but we love the process and we love, the Gita and we try to put it in action in our lives.
So in
Um,
92, maybe it was, I get a phone call from Sarvatma who says, um, there's someone here who wants to talk to you. Call me back. And I'm like, what? Call me back. This is back when a long distance call was a long distance
and a
call.
lot of
And
money.
like if someone wants to talk to me, tell them to call me up. But so I called him up and it was Tamal Krishna. And we spent the next 5 hours talking.
I had
And
to bring him water.
right. She was trying to keep me conscious the whole time. And we sort of set things up. And he said, if we're going to really build our relationship, we need to serve together. We need to do service and work together. And that's when he told me about a novel he had been working on. He wanted me to come into that and work with him on it. As it turned out, he really wanted to turn it over to me and have me take it from there. And then he,
The result of that conversation was that he invited us to come to Dallas. Well, first you went down and saw him again and spent a great time reconnecting. And then the whole family went down. So we had by that time three kids, one a little
his
little kid.
when we saw him in Brooklyn, one of the first things he said to us, his first instruction, he said, "Whatever you do, don't have any more children. You'll
You need to
never,"
be established as, devotees and concentrate on your spiritual life because more kids will just be hard.
he said, "You'll never advance in your spiritual life if you have any more kids." And
We
so
promptly got
10
pregnant
months
right away.
later, our next child was born. And then another year or two after that, another child was born. Although when we got together in I guess it was like 96 or so, he had many we talked for hours and hours and hours, and he had a lot of apologies actually.
He apologized for saying that.
Yeah, he said I never should have said that. And he became a member at this time he was in a period of his life where he was softening. Different things were going on with him. And everyone notes that like sort of he started to change. And I think it's very clear that if that he could not have accepted us into his life that way if he had not begun that softening process.
If we had
And
not also taken up the process,
he wrote that. He said we never could be together except you're the only family member, the only one I know, from before who is taken up Krishna consciousness. And he felt that Krishna had, really sent me and brought us together for the purpose of him being able to experience family in his life
yeah,
without compromising his standards. Um,
Wow.
yeah, he
and
loved the kids,
he
and
became Uncle
it
Tamal.
was Uncle
He's never
Tamal.
been known as anything else in our home. He is the most loving uncle. He would
Mhm.
hug the kids. I mean, so different. He would love to take, especially our youngest, on his lap and hug her. He would write to her.
Yeah, he would really like talk to them. Um, they loved him like dearly. It was just
Wow.
In
fantastic.
in 99, we had never been out of the country before, and we it was my first sabbatical. So we decided, oh, why not just go to India for 6 months?
Okay, so at
And
this point, you'd been in for about 11 years,
Yeah,
right?
and our
Yeah.
children were 7, 9, and 11,
12.
Okay.
12,
Yeah,
11, yeah, and 12. And so we went to India
yeah.
and we were in,
What was nice too when you have kids, in those years there were some like Sunday school curriculum for devotee kids. They were just starting to do that. So I had sent away, I think to Alachua or somewhere for materials. So we'd I didn't stop going to church, and we baptized our kids, in the Lutheran church. So
Can
all
we
the
can we talk about that for just a little bit? Because this is
yeah,
very interesting that I have, you guys are probably one of the only couples that I've met that practices these two faiths actively and has kind of integrated them into your family. And so can you talk about that a little
We're
bit?
it's
front
it's
pew in the church every Sunday morning.
it's one faith. It's not two faiths.
Oh,
It's
okay.
one faith. God speaks to all his children across the world according to time, place, and circumstance. Where we're born may have a faith tradition, and I emphasize tradition. It's one faith around the world, but the traditions vary, and the personalities who bring that message vary. So I was not going to abandon my beloved Jesus, so um, and that was Tamal. One of the first things he did tell us early was he said, you know, just add Krishna.
Keep doing what you're doing. Stay
Do
where
what you're
you are.
doing. And we wanted to move into a devotee community in the 90s, like to Dallas. And he
And
said, no,
Shraddhanjali, you never felt like you were like turning your back on your Lutheran faith by
never, not
practicing.
even 1 minute.
Yeah.
Even after that first program, when it opened the Bible to me, I didn't stop reading the Bible. Then read the Bible with the Gita principles in mind. And I looked at all like my favorite stories, and I like was connecting them to the Gita. So I'd have the two books, you know. I loved it. I felt like, one of the big things two things that Jesus said that were very Krishna conscious, or I thought was like, he said, I only tell you some things. There's many more things to tell you. But it wasn't right for that time, place, and circumstances. So I felt like he was saying, well, there's a lot of Gita stuff I could tell you, but and the other was, which is very
And we
misinterpreted.
were bringing our kids up in both traditions
Yeah,
at the same time.
we'd be doing little more, yeah, very modified
And
morning
we had
programs.
Tulsi Devi in
And
home.
Sunday they went
Yeah.
to Sunday school, like
And that
We
was
were
never confusing for them.
no, because we talked to them about it if they had a question. Um,
we were very open about who we were in
in
church.
church. Oh, they knew
We were
exactly who.
devotees. Yeah. And we gave programs about it. We would after we went to India, we used photographs as sort of an anchor for presentations. And we'd call them first like images of India. But they were all presentations about Krishna
Yeah,
consciousness.
one we did at our church, 2 Sundays in a row
Yeah.
for adult ed, and it was like 100 people came each time, was the other monotheism,
Right.
which was Vaishnav.
Because they think of Hinduism as this
Yeah.
polytheistic. Yeah.
Now, wait, did you ever get resistance or criticism?
Not at our church. We had
Not
From
to our
family or
faces anyway.
friends?
not to our faces, no. But our
Okay.
pastors were totally into. I mean, we brought
We are who we are.
we're
So,
just who we are.
yeah.
Like, and that's the thing. If you can't handle it, you can't handle it. But yeah, so like, the kids went to the church preschool. And so after we came home from during the 90s, Irene was like 3, and she was in the church preschool, and every time they would go into the sanctuary, at the end of the day to do their prayers, she took off her shoes and ran up to the altar and did dandavats. And the preschool teachers thought that was hilarious, like so that the kid. So yeah, I guess it was a little confusing for them, but we just talked to them about it, you know.
And we also gave programs. We started to give programs in the community. We would go to
Never
school.
did home programs
Yeah.
like the
We
normal
had one or two. That's,
stuff
yeah.
that people do in Krishna consciousness. But
We,
we would go to like alternative schools where kids had dropped out. They were like the druggy kids or the pregnant kids or whatever.
they'd gotten kicked out of schools,
And
public.
those were my favorites because the kids were just they had felt out like out of normality. And this Krishna consciousness, like, I don't know, it was, I thought those were great.
And in big public schools, it was, and in libraries, and we would
And
do, and book groups on Bhagavad Gita. And we taught also, we were at a Catholic school
a
and university,
diocesan university under the Pope,
right?
like the bishop and
There's
everything.
there's only a half a dozen, maybe 7 or 8 diocesan Catholic schools in America, right? They're direct, as you're saying, they're
Yeah,
direct
direct from
from
the
the
Vatican.
Vatican down.
And
And
I was who I was. I had pictures of Krishna in my office. I had Gitas, you know, that I would have to give out if it was appropriate.
and she was the ordering librarian for areas of
Theology.
theology and
So
philosophy.
our Vaishnav collection
It's quite
was probably
sizable.
the biggest in the area.
So you never felt even just like a little like weird or like nervous or like I remember when I first started chanting, like I didn't want to take my bead bag into work. Like I felt like I would, people would think I was strange or like that never happened to
I
you.
didn't bring my bead back to work.
And
Yeah.
But
it's not
the thing is, I'm not a very big bead chanter anyway. I would actually, I did a lot of this chanting.
On your fingers.
Yeah, at work.
But
we're
even so, like you were afraid people would see pictures of Krishna or deities and think that you were weird,
They could think I'm weird. I didn't
but it never bothered you.
know because I was always a little weird.
kind of weird
It
anyway.
was always a little.
Like I had to deal with being really like kind of strange all through my childhood and I was bullied for it. But somehow I was very, very loved at home. We both come from very loving parents, very
Uh,
unconditionally loving parents,
uh-huh.
which I think is very, very helpful to, you know,
Our
being
security
out there.
and helped us be loving people. I mean, as
Okay,
much as we
now we
can.
only have a little bit of time left, so I want to get to this parenting question. So as parents and raising parents, what kind of advice can you give to other parents for raising their kids in spiritual environment or, some parents started this path like halfway through. Their kids are close to being grown or, so what kind of advice can you give?
Um, don't
And
force them to do
are your
anything.
kids practicing spiritual life right now?
No,
No,
they
No?
are
Okay.
but
they're vegetarians, strict vegetarians.
really
That's
staunch.
as far as
There's no compromise on veg for them, and that has to come from them. For me, a parent should be a lighthouse, and you get used to the choppy water of life, and then they have to sail out, and they'll see the light for a while, but then they have to do their own journey and become their own light. It has to come from them. So we presented it all to them. We never forced them to do anything except listen and, at that point, but outside of our instruction or the going, how to behave in a temple, sure, we told them how to do that. And we didn't let them run wild. They had to listen to the lecture. They could color, but they had to listen. And we talked to them about it. We're very big explainers to our kids. So, and sometimes they'd roll their eyes like, oh, you tell us too much, but it goes in their ear. And um, so certain things like our daughter was in a near accident and she called me and was like, I just started chanting Krishna, 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 So it's those kind of things.
and
And
they identify that way.
yeah. And our son has, he's in a shringa. He has it in his room with his little, he has a little thing. But what I see them being Krishna conscious as, not in practicing these outward things, they are so compassionate. They're so kind to others. They're considerate. In fact, they complain that they're too considerate, you know, of others, like they but the thing is they know, like even Krishna consciousness teaches you about sexuality, like and the whole we're not our body. So it's, you know, so they were very accepting of anyone's whatever because they thought, well, they're just the soul. And I mean, that's how my father was like
They have
too.
a deep
They have
philosophical
they have
understanding.
a deep philosophical understanding because they heard all this stuff and they
But I agree with what you said that just not to force to,
Yeah.
to let them come on as they come, to let them have the experience and
Yes.
then they can choose,
Yeah.
not to not that they shouldn't have the experience. Otherwise, there's no choice if there's no
How do you know what to choose if
choices.
you don't know what the choices are,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. How do you guys, this might be a little bit of a tough question, but how do you how do you take that as a parent? Like, is that hard for you?
Oh,
Like the fact that
I
they're
Oh,
not
yeah.
wish they were
actively
devotees. Yeah.
I'm like, if they were going through a hard time, I'm like, well, just chant.
Yeah.
Like get your beads out. They have beads. And chant, like or go to the temple or go, like or read the Gita,
Our kids are now 33, 36, 39.
yeah.
So we have little direct influence on it.
But like our youngest Irene, she took her Gita to college with her and talked to people about it. Like so it was just part of their life in a loving, affectionate way.
And maybe they'll, who knows what their futures hold.
Yeah.
That's not our responsibility and at a certain after, once they're old.
Not my
Right.
problem anyway.
And anyway, like and as a parent, you always pray for them and
Yeah.
ask Krishna to protect their hearts.
And we're a very close family.
Yeah. Really
We spent, yeah.
affection with children is everything. They lean in for love. So you got to
Mhm.
lean in to love them. No
Mhm.
matter what their question is, no matter how they're behaving, they should know the norms of behavior, but it's behavior, not who they are. So, like, I really tried not to say, I don't want you to do this, because all they'll hear is, I don't want you. Right.
Mhm.
So you don't, to try to change that to be like, well, just add, you just learned about something. Why don't you add what you just learned to this situation?
Mhm.
Or if they had trouble with kids in school, I would say, think about how they're suffering in the material world. Like they are expressing their misery of the suffering of this
Mhm.
material world. So how can you respond and be safe? You know,
Yeah.
so it was always like that. And they just kind of imbibed it.
Yeah. Wow.
And even today, yesterday, I met a good friend of my daughter. We went to this great LA workout place. It was so cool. And we went to lunch afterward. And the her friend is like a compliance in a company and she was talking about something and I said, "Well, like you should just do your thing without any expectation of a result. You can't control the result of how people are going to take it." And and the woman was like, "Oh, I guess, yeah, that would make me feel better." Or she said something. And I looked at Liana and I was like, and she looked at me like, "Yeah, that's Gita, you know?"
Oh,
But we
wow.
don't say it explicitly. I didn't say,
Yeah.
"Oh, according to the Gita." It was like,
Yeah.
no, why don't you think about how you'd feel if you didn't have an expectation of result? You know,
Yeah.
it's like that,
Beautiful. Beautiful. It's built into their
built
childhood
in.
and upbringing. That's beautiful.
One very cool part of our experience at the university was I was able to teach Bhagavad Gita class there for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And to all these Catholic students who were raised in Catholic schools.
It was cross-listed with philosophy,
Yeah.
so they could take it as a philosophy or English credit.
And it was really, they like so much of it, they were getting into like the spiritual but not religious, kind of a mood, as so many college students are. And it really opened up for them. And I think that many of them would say how it helped them become better Catholics, like embrace their own Catholicism more. And then we took maybe 4 groups of students and church members to Vrindavan on
Cool.
service learning trips. And it wasn't like a tourism trip, but they did service, for the Brijvasis there, at the school for impoverished girls and like that. And we're with the cows, and they went out with the hospice workers. And we didn't force, I mean, they were strictly Catholic, and we didn't, but they had the experience of it. And I think giving people the experience, it's like it really is a wonderful experience.
Yeah,
And if they don't feel like pressure that what they're doing is wrong and this is right, it's very attractive to them. Whether they adopt
Wow.
it now, we were never trying to make devotees. We were just trying to, expose them to Krishna consciousness and show them like how we're weird, but we're like normal people, that like normal people can be devotees too. And
Yeah.
today they never
Just
heard of like,
Krishna.
yeah, they never heard of airports or like anything like that. They don't have any of the baggage around Christian consciousness that older people might have had before. So they're like, yeah, this is nice.
This is so inspiring. Okay, I
Yes.
have two more questions for you guys before we go. The first is what part of the Gita or what principle in the Gita or can you tell us something that like has really resonated with you or has really kind of been transformative in your lives? Um,
Well, again, I try to really live that, to perform your duty without expectation of result. That's like core for me.
mm,
The core. Um, Also that the recent, you know, steps. If you can't do this, do this. If you can't do
mm,
that, do this. If you can't
yeah.
do, I love that about the Gita. Just you can enter whoever you are at any point, and work your way up, and it's individual. This is what I love about the Gita. It's wherever you are. It's not like you have to come in and you have to say and do this stuff or else you're out, you know. It's it's so inclusive.
Yeah, beautiful. By you, Kalachandji?
Yeah, really the first thing that Shradanjali said, giving up the fruits or offering the fruits of one's actions, it just changes, for me, it changes the whole life.
Yeah.
And I'm not disappointed. I don't, it's not so attached. And at least for me also, like retiring from teaching. I mean, I walked away in one day and a
Mhm.
new life started. There, yeah, and I also just the love, it there's so much love there in the
Yeah.
Gita. Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, like that idea of detaching while performing, and while loving. Whatever it is, your family, your friends, at work, you understand what it really is
yeah.
like, and that it's not actually affecting your soul.
Mm,
It's freeing.
And the importance of service for me,
Yeah.
service is by
Duty.
my favorite thing about Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
And if one can find service that suits one, that one's happy doing it, whatever that service is, I find for me it just makes my life so rich, so complete. I've been very blessed to have a lot of service. I love that.
Yeah, and even
wow.
at that was even yesterday when Liana and I were driving away from seeing her friend, and we talked about how this woman who doesn't have a ton of money was helping the homeless in LA. She was telling the story about helping the homeless, and Liana and I talked about um like the millionaires who have a hole they can't fill with money. And
Mm,
here's this woman who just does service.
And you had
And her heart was
mm.
full.
you had another question? I know
Yeah, the last question. Um, what do you know about spiritual life now that you wish you would have understood when you first started?
Wow.
I didn't give these questions to them before, so
What do I
they're
know?
they're very much on the spot.
I don't. I, I'm one thing I love about this sangha, this class, is like I feel new again.
Yeah.
It's everything. After, from 12 years old, all the years in the university, it's so brand new for me. I So I'm not answering your question, but I'm saying like maybe my answer is like nothing. I mean, I'm just still learning. And I like every Monday and Thursday, I'm learning all this great new stuff. And it's like reading the Gita for the first time, getting new perspectives. I love it so much. It's really it's just opened up my heart again to it. And so I feel like I don't know anything more now, and I'm still learning it. So I sorry to not to be able to give a straight answer.
And I would say like I wish I had sought out more association very, very early.
Hmm.
Because it's this association, even right here, that is so nourishing to one's practice and one's life and one's, happiness. And, we were kind of isolated in Iowa, um, and we didn't have Zoom and technology.
Very, we're almost 4 hours away from closest temple.
And we even that temple, we would go all little family, everything, little sikas on jam and dressed up, and no one would talk to us. No one talked to us. We'd go to the temple, we'd do all the things, we'd eat and leave.
So maybe that Krishna consciousness is something in one's life, not just something one finds in the temple.
Yes. We
Hmm.
had to, and that was Tamal Krishna's vision for us, is that he knew us well. I'm very rebellious. I probably would have been thrown out of a temple because like I don't do it if I don't want to do it. So being at home, we had to incorporate it in an actual life that looks like. And we have many friends who aren't devotees, but are beautiful people that we found who have generous hearts. And we're friends with them. And so we share love.
Yeah, we try to represent Krishna
Yeah.
consciousness in who we are.
Wow. Wow. I am so inspired by you both. I was inspired by you both before this interview, but now I feel even more inspired by you both. You're both just so real, so vulnerable, so authentic, and and also at the same time, you've really learned these things and integrated them into your lives in a way that it's become like lived knowledge, lived spiritual life. And for a long time, for almost 40 years. So it's really inspiring to us all. Thank you. Thank you all for coming and for sharing your story, which was like that needs to be written in a book or something. I was like on the edge of my seat every crazy detail.
We needed
And
like 3 more hours.
I know, I realized that. I was like, oh my gosh, we really do we need another segment. Because there's so much that we could still
And
unpack.
anyone can, write, call, whatever, Zoom us with any questions or
Oh,
anything.
yeah.
And but we also, would like to hear other stories.
Yes, and maybe this is a good thing every once in a while to interview someone. Where are they at? Like what's going on with them? Because I would have loved to have heard those stories too as an early person. And again, we're decades in. If you're just starting out, don't try to jump ahead. Just do little things to bring it in. That's all we did. We did not jump to this. We were not like this in 1993, like
And
Hmm.
Rana is so great at reaching us all where we are.
Sarada, you're true,
Mm,
true.
okay, so
Thank you.
wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both. And I agree. Let's do this again. Let's do these interviews and get to know each other better and learn from each other. And because that's what it's about, like you said, right? This
If it's
community.
Gita in action, what
Yeah.
are you acting? What is the actions?
Yes. Yes. Beautiful. Thank you all. Thank you. And we'll see you on Monday.
Jai.
Bye.
Love you all.
Thank you. Bye. Hare Krishna.